Hi, it's me again. I haven't done a video in like 4 months, so my sincerest apologies to any subscribers that may keep up with my channel there. Anyway, I want to get back. I've got several responses I'm working on, and I've got my little notebook where I keep my notes in here, the videos, and when I have thoughts I jot them down so I don't forget. But before I do those responses, just something was on my mind. A comment was made on one of my pages on the one of separation of church and state. One user said, he said to me, you said, quote, morals have everything to do with legislation. Then he responded, you cannot legislate morals in a free country. You have the right to live your life as you choose, but you do not have the right to push people in a moral direction that you think they should go in. This is a free country. Well, see, statements like this are kind of like asking, did your mother know you ate the cupcake? Well, whether you say yes or no, you ate the cupcake. Well, what if you didn't eat the cupcake? You got kind of a false premise here. And the fact that, yes, we absolutely have to legislate morals. The will of the people in the United States. Now, I don't believe our government no longer listens to the people. I think that's obvious. But the point is, you have the will of the people, and no one should rule over them that the people don't allow to rule over them. That was the whole kind of premise of what the Founding Fathers said. We should be, in a sense, self-governed, a representative government. Now, however, when he says you cannot legislate morals in a free country, let me just read my comment to begin my response. I said morals are always being legislated. What is moral for one group is immoral for another. Somebody wins, somebody loses. For instance, right now abortion is legal and therefore acceptable within some people's moral scope. Some of us think taxing people to death is wrong because it is stealing. That is immoral. My point is that one cannot one cannot separate morals from governance. We cannot avoid legislating morals again. Whose morals are we legislating? That is the question. And this goes to the heart of the issue that many atheists, which have no ground in the Founding Fathers, because even Founding Fathers such as Thomas Paine, who were virulently against revelation, such as the Quran or the Bible, you know, not just a general revelation, but a specific revelation. However, if you'd actually read The Age of Reason, he makes quite a compelling case for objective morality because of the Creator. He makes quite a compelling case for the existence of God. And that God sends His objective morality, that message, all that through the creation. So he believed it a little bit different, but I still am just amazed at the atheists just grasping at Thomas Paine when he would have completely disagreed with them on a whole lot of things. Again, if you read that for yourself, instead of reading little quotes in atheist web pages, you'd get that. But anyway, so here's a problem I have. I think a lot of atheists think that there's this kind of pseudo-neutral moral ground that somehow someone can stand on that takes no real positions, that really harms none, and that really everybody can agree with. Well, that's just not true. Okay? The Bill of Rights, just take for example, okay, the right to free speech, First Amendment, probably one everybody knows the most famously. Why is it wrong to restrict someone's free speech? See, when you ask that question, you're moving into moral areas. Well, it's wrong. Well, why is it wrong? Okay, he's saying you cannot legislate moral, but at the very first one, we've reached a moral issue that is legislated. I've got a great book called Perilous Times, Free Speech in Wartime. It's about yay thick. I'm about halfway through it. That goes through the issue of free speech during wartime in the United States. And yes, there were some legislative decisions made. You cannot get around it. The Second Amendment, to arm the people so that the government cannot be tyrannical. Okay? That's a moral issue. One of my favorites, the Fourth Amendment, against illegal search and seizure, the right to privacy and all of that. That's a moral issue. To sit back and pretend, and see, this is how atheists try to get in their mind that, well, that just the complete separation of God and any objective morality, etc., etc. There is no such thing as your pseudo-neutral moral ground. It's kind of something I made up myself there. So here's a problem I have, okay? Number one, I wrote a note here. The problem with so-called atheist moral values, they are subjective. They cannot be applied to anyone but themselves, and upon no others. Now, you may not see a problem with it. However, our government has to legislate some morals. The people decided what those morals were at the beginning of our country, and we've continued those traditions on. You've got to get the understanding here of what I mean. Subjective moral values, i.e. they are not objective. So, if you have subjective moral values, that means your moral value is not transcendent. It doesn't go above your head. It doesn't leave from between your ears. And this is a problem, because when there is no objective moral values for the society to agree upon. Now, I know what the atheist is going to say at this point. They're going to say, well, the people, we get together and we decide what the moral values are. Well, okay, you could say that. However, the problem is that will ultimately lead to tyranny if there's not an objective moral standard that is based on something more than a bunch of people's opinions that happen to be in one geographical area at one time. History has shown that over and over again. But anyway, and I'm rambling here, but the irony also is the fact that you have a group of atheists who will point their finger at religions and Christianity and say, well, mostly Catholicism, because biblical Christianity teaches you not to oppress people. If people would actually read the Gospels, they would know that. That they say, well, look how Christianity oppressed people by not letting so-and-so do this and so-and-so do that. But yet atheism at its very core is oppressive, because while Christianity was abused and misused, at the core of its teaching, the objective moral standard gives something everybody can appeal to. It's true freedom. It's something, it's justice. It's real morals. However, in the atheistic worldview, you have everybody's opinion. And everybody disagrees on a lot of moral issues. Now, there's some general agreement because God gave us this thing called a conscience that the atheist tries to ignore. However, when you have a group of people that think one issue should be one way, but then you have maybe a minority that think it should be another way, if there's no transcendent objective moral standard, nobody is more right than the other, okay? Well, isn't that group of majority oppressing that minority? Oh, you Christians, you oppress people. Wait a minute, you oppress people. Because you're at least if I could give you that ground, you could say Christians oppress people with an objective standard that those people ought to have known better to follow. But in atheism, you can't say that. You've just got a bunch of people with their opinions shoving their opinion down someone else's throat. That's the subjective nature of so-called atheist morality, which is really no such thing, oppressing people, okay? So these subjective moral standards, well, first of all, they can't account for the conscience. The conscience goes much deeper than some kind of social standard. Okay? Without the objective moral standards, there is no true freedom. You can try to point to all the times when the Catholic Church abused situations and religious people used tyranny, etc., which there have been times, of course, but that's diametrically opposed to the message of the New Testament, and that's easily provable. However, when an atheist oppresses someone, again, based on what grounds could you say it's wrong? See, when Stalin killed, say, 75% of his Air Force, which is why the Luftwaffe came in and wiped them out at the beginning of World War II, there's nothing really wrong with that in atheistic morality. And you could say, well, I'm against that. Well, that's great. But you've got no objective moral standard to appeal to, and if someone comes to you and says, well, I'm for it, then you have no right, no moral justification, and no moral ground upon which to say that's wrong. So, and that's the point you just can't get atheists to admit to. You cannot get them to be consistent with their own worldview that is survival of the fittest. Stalin was the fittest, he wiped out the weaker ones, and that's the way life is. But yet they cry, oppression, oppression. Oh, how melodramatic. Anyway, the point is, folks, you will have to legislate morals in a free society. While we want the maximum amount of freedom for all, we have to acknowledge that there is a God, and He does have a moral standard, okay? So, sorry, that's just the way it is. And, well, I'm not really sorry, but the point is, folks, you're going to legislate morals whether you like it or not. The real question is, again, whose morals will you legislate?